Hello everyone, we are here to talk about the business rules enhancements in Clarity 15.9.3. So what's new in 15.9.3? In this release, we are enhancing the business rules in the following three areas. One, we now allow you to dynamically execute the action without the need for a manual refresh of the page. So if I have an action defined in the business rules, such as hiding of sections and modules, the minute the conditions are met, the user screen will automatically refresh and the user screen will automatically have those actions executed without the user doing any action against it. Making the entire record read-only and enforcing of attribute to be required based on blueprint. Why is this important? Of course, in 15.9.2, we had our first release of business rules to our customers. In 15.9.3, we are enhancing that functionality, and every PI over PI will continue to bring some customer required functionalities in business rules. So in this release, we are doing those three specific changes. So let's talk about the first one. New actions have been added to disable editing of the entire record when conditions are met. This is a new action that is added in the business rules. And once checked, then what it does is essentially, based on the conditions that are met, the entire record, the object instance record, will become read-only. That means the user can no longer make changes to it in the grid, in the flyout, or in the properties. Next, it's the dynamically execution of actions. So in the past, the users could define conditions and define actions to hide modules and sections. However, once those conditions are met, the user had to make some actions, such as they had to refresh the screen or navigate away and come back. Now, you would see that the user screen will automatically get refreshed, and the changes, which is whatever actions needed to be executed, will automatically get executed without the need for the end user to do anything. Making of the entire record read-only. This is a new rule that was introduced. When executed, every field in the record becomes read-only. There is no changes to the sub-object record. So it's only that object instance record that becomes read-only. And this will take place in the properties, the flyout, and in the grid. The last change is the enforcing of the attribute to become required based on the blueprint itself. This action is only possible for project blueprints. Ability to require an attribute based on the blueprint for that project. Required attributes can only be set when the condition is set to always true. So there is a new checkbox that is introduced in the condition section. This new checkbox basically is set is always true or not. When you check the always true, that means all the conditions are executed all the time. This checkbox also allows you to then set the required attributes. You can configure any number of required attributes as required for that blueprint. The required attribute are enforced in the create modal, in the properties, in the flyout, and in the grid layout. Ability for the customers to enforce blueprint specific required fields at the time of project creation. So if I have defined a list of attributes as blueprint required, then as soon as I try to create a new project with that blueprint, that field that is required will if not already included in the create modal, will automatically get added to my create modal. So let's look at the business rules enhancements in action. So here I am in Clarity 15.9.3. The first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and look at my blueprint configuration itself. So I'm going to go into my MonUX admin. I'm going to go into the blueprints, and I'm going to see the blueprints for two specific areas. The first is the projects. And under the rules for my project, I see that there are 3 rules that are predefined. Let's go ahead and edit it. The first rule, which is an existing one, in this case, I can see based on certain conditions, the modules that need to be hidden. I can control the modules based on the work status in this example that I have. If the work status is equal to on hold, I can hide the financials and risk issues and changes because I don't want anybody making changes to them if the project goes on hold. And my last one is where I have set a blueprint specific required attribute. This blueprint specific required attribute is only available to me when I have set the conditions to always true. The action is required attributes, and in my case, I am setting the strategic sponsor as a required attribute. If I uncheck that, then you will notice that I do not have the option to set required attributes. So the required attributes can only be set when the always true condition is checked. So once that is now set, I will see required attributes as the only action available to me, and I can then pick the attributes I want to require. So required attributes based on the conditions always set. The next one I'm going to see is under my blueprints for my custom investment types of contract. I want to make sure that once a contract goes in effect, I don't want any changes to be made to my contract. It's a contract in effect, so no changes, no numbers, no value should be edited. To do that, I can create the business rules called contract in effect, and I can say that once the contract is in effect, I want to disable editing of this record. So that entire contract record should be disabled from any further changes. So let's look at these now rules in action. To do that, we are first going to go into the contracts. I'm going to go into my custom investment type. I can go into my contracts. In here, I see some of my contracts are already in effect and some are in draft or in the signed state. The ones that is in the signed state, it has not gone into an effect. That means the entire record is still available for me to edit, and I can go ahead and make changes to the goal. I can change the location if I want. I can even change the values, the financial values, if those are editable values. I can make the changes either in the grid or I can make the changes in the flyout. So I can change the architectural to be very high and so on. Once the contract goes in effect, I change this contract status to in effect, and you would notice that everything became grayed. The contract in effect, the business rule has kicked in, and the entire field or the entire record is now non-editable. I cannot edit it in my flyout. I cannot change it in my grid view. And the same applies if I go inside in my properties, everything is grayed out, nothing can be edited. So this contract is in effect, no changes are allowed to it. Next, we want to look at the business rules in regards to the automatic execution. We saw a sample of it when the contract went in effect, but let's look at it again in projects. So here I'm going to go into project and I'm going to go into my e-business mobile. The rules say that the minute this project, if its work status goes to on hold, then I do not want the financials and the risk issue changes to be available to my end user. So let's see that in action. I'm going to put this project on hold. I'm not doing any changes. The minute the value is saved, it automatically refreshes the screen for the user. Finance and risk issue changes are all automatically removed from, those modules are automatically removed from my properties page. And all the sections are automatically removed from my property space. So the execution of the actions is all automatic and it happens as soon as the value is saved. I can run it again. Let's make it active again and you'll see the financials and stuff automatically come back. So the financials, the risk issues automatically came back in. The last one we want to look at is the blueprint required attributes. To do that, I'm going to go into my projects. And if you remember, we created a rule, which was the strategic sponsor is a required value if I am creating a new project or if I'm creating a project with that specific blueprint. So let's go ahead and create a new project. That rule only applied for my one that had the project default as the blueprint. When I select that and I go to next, you will notice that the strategic sponsor is now automatically added to my screen. If I go to the blueprint just to confirm, the project defaults for my create modal was not there. It got automatically added to my create modal because that's now a required field for this specific blueprint. I cancel out and I go in, try to create another one with a different blueprint, which is the default blueprint that comes out of the box. Here you will see that the strategic sponsor is not automatically added. It is not a required field because that is only required for that specific blueprint and not all the other ones. Also, because the strategic sponsor is a required field based on the blueprint, if the value, once the value is populated, I cannot unset it either. So if I go into an existing project with the same blueprint, if I try to set the value to none, I will get an API error saying that this value is required and cannot be empty. The same thing will happen if I try to make changes in the flyout. Or I try to make the changes in the properties. I get the same error message displaying that the value is required and cannot be made null. So this concludes the section in regards to the business rule enhancements.